Good evening, everybody. For those of you that were over on our locals platform, we covered a lot of the things. We're going to cover a few, or quite a few of the same things we covered over there. You can join us there at standupmichigan.locals.com. We are going to be very soon having some unique content over there that you're simply not going to get on these other channels, but we do appreciate you joining us over here this evening. We've got a lot of things to talk about in regards to what happened both in the election and what we have facing us here in these next 90 days. So I'm just giving just a few minutes. Let me know where you're from. Shoot out some comments so that I can see them. I'm not seeing any yet. So I see we've got a bunch of people giving us some reactions, but I want to see a few comments here, if you will. Let me know where you're from also, so that we know what counties we have represented. And while we do that, I'm going to go ahead and get things started. I want to start out with you by talking about all of the incredible things that happened on Tuesday. I want to talk to you about the incredible wins that we experienced because of all of you. It's important because you have to know where we were 2 years ago. We did not have organization. There were no grassroots groups that were really organized. It happened because of the lockdowns, the oppression, the tyranny that we experienced. All the candidates that have run, certainly as governor, all came out of those same things and how it affected each one of them. I bring this up to you because I want to compare where we were in a state 2 years ago after the 2020 election, and we recognize what happened in that election. But the first thing that happened after the election is 2 of the 10 congressional congressmen, I should say, right here from West Michigan, who sat at the airport and took President Trump's endorsements the day before the presidential election of 2020, voted to impeach that president. That was Fred Upton, and that was Peter Meijer. I mentioned that because a few short months ago, thanks to a freshman congressman named Steve Carra, who decided to run against Upton and make sure everybody knew that he would not be reelected. A man, by the way, that was raising millions and millions of dollars, mostly from outside Michigan, mostly from D.C., and special interest groups and PACs that were controlling his message and backing him up in his impeachment talks. Then with redistricting, what happened? Bill Huizenga ended up in the same district, and Bill Huizenga got pushed to the right. He went down and met with President Trump, and he got President Trump's endorsement. And what happened then? Fred Upton retired. He retired not because he didn't have the money, not because he didn't have the will. He retired because the people let it be known he would simply not be reelected in Michigan. Let's move on to Tuesday. Peter Meijer, I don't know what the number is, 10-1, 20-1, whatever it is, that he outspent John Gibbs, an incredible patriotic man who ran against Peter Meijer with limited resources. Our Stand Up Michigan groups helped get his signatures, along with many other grassroots leaders at events around West Michigan, to get him on the ballot, literally with days to spare. And then an uphill campaign where, again, he was able to go speak and to spread the word through many of these large organizational meetings that happened and these events that happened throughout West Michigan over the last 6 or 7 months. And in the meantime, Peter Meijer sat in the background, knew that he had millions of dollars that was coming, knew that he had the Meijer name, and he felt like he was safe because this indeed was a Democratic +8 district. Do not buy it for a minute. Based on what demographic are you talking about? Because the demographics simply aren't the same as they were before 2020. And what happened Tuesday night? John Gibbs, in a very narrow race, but in a very, very spirited race, defeated Peter Meijer. Both of those congressmen are gone before we ever get to November election. That's because of you. It's because of your involvement and your engagement and you being not willing to give up and you being resolved that they would not represent us any longer. I bring that up because it's important for us to look at other wins. Steve Carra won. The freshman moves to a new district, and he won, and he will be running again, obviously, in November to get a second term at the State House. We had people like John James, who had run for Senate twice and decided to run on the east side of Michigan at the state level, and he won. We have people like Gina Johnson and Angela Regas, both Trump-endorsed people who won their districts and will be running in November. Neil Frisky, from up at Frisky area up there in Antrim County who won. And I know there's a couple other counties involved in that race, but he did an incredible job, ran a great campaign against, I think it was 4 or 5 candidates that were running in that race. And he prevailed there, and he'll be running in November. Jonathan Lindsay is another one, Trump endorsed, and he prevailed. So understand that we have gotten more informed, educated people, many that came out of grassroots that decided to stand up and serve and run. And you went out and helped them a little financially, but more importantly, helped them on the ground and spreading the word and holding events. And they're all moving us further and further to freedom and liberty, to choosing freedom over tyranny and oppression that we've experienced over the last number of years. Let's talk about those of you that are in West Michigan. We have Ottawa County. The Ottawa County Impact Group and Joe Moss and a whole team of people decided that they had had enough of people that were serving as Republicans for years, but were never truly conservatives. They were not rhinos. You can call them that, I guess, because they did run under the R brand. But understand, in rural Michigan and in rural America, you can simply not be elected to anywhere in those areas unless you run as a Republican. The primary is the race. Do you understand? You have to run as a Republican or you simply can't be elected. So liberals run as Republicans, and they have served and controlled the boards all across the state of Michigan, from school boards to township boards, city councils, and certainly county commissions. And then when we have something happen like happened with the governor, they go right along. They go along with the health departments. They didn't stand up for businesses or people or parents or what's being taught in school, because they were exactly who they always have been. They were liberals. They were progressives. They were people who were in fear and did not live under freedom and liberty. And this group, the Ottawa County Impact Group, decided they were going to run against 9 incumbents, 9 incumbent Republicans. And they raised up people to serve all 9 of those places. And in this election Tuesday night, they prevailed in 8 of the 9. I know for some of you in West Michigan, you've heard this story because it's been all over West Michigan. But for those of you that aren't in West Michigan, this is a huge story, because the Ottawa Impact story and how they did it and how they organized and how they branded themselves. They used the Ottawa Impact logo, and they used basically a pact that they were going to have and they're going to follow and commit to. But they used that logo or branding, but then put each of the names on there against a competitor who didn't represent them. And they all, again, 8 out of 9 of them prevailed. This isn't just flipping a county. This is completely changing the way that politics and the way that government will be run in Ottawa County. It will actually represent their populace, their voting public, their conservative community, and been run by liberals for years. No longer. And we are going to take, as Stand Up Michigan always does, take what people do well and have already figured out as a template and duplicate it through our county chapters and through grassroots organizations across this state, so that by the time we get to 2024, number one, we're going to get this year yet a lot of your county commissioners on record before they run in November as to what they're going to do and how they're going to represent you. We need to get them to sign on to these pacts. What are they going to do for us? How are they going to make sure that none of these things happen ever again, regardless of who gets elected as governor? Politics is local. We recognize in Stand Up Michigan, as we started, we called 2020 the year of the protest. Organization and protest, unlock Michigan, protest, change the law, get rid of the mandates, whatever it is. 2021 was organization and structure. It was creating county chapters, individual groups that were running and operating to handle and be the solution in your own community, as we've always talked to you. Caring, informing, and activating. You can't activate people from, Newaygo, Michigan to Wayne County. You got to activate people from within Wayne County to be the solution in Wayne County, where you recognize the problems and where you have influence and where you have credibility. And that credibility and influence is built because there's a number of you who are involved in the process. Maybe you're on the commission and you're a minority, but you're now moving things forward because you are speaking intelligently and you're providing good information and you're following the law and you're demanding that others do the same. We are changing Michigan one community at a time, and we are just getting started. Precinct delegates. What happened at the April convention? It didn't happen because we had a ton of people that were already elected precinct delegates that went to county convention first and then state convention and simply voted to get Matt DePerno as our future attorney general and Christina Caramo as our future secretary of state. That didn't happen because we had those precinct delegates in place. But guess what? We do now, or we will now in November. What we saw all across Michigan was people who were understood, because what first happened was where there were so many empty slots for Republican precinct delegates all over Michigan that at these county conventions, they were elevated because people didn't show up or they didn't have enough, that they were elevated to voting status, went to the state convention, and they voted for grassroots candidates. Now what we've done is we flipped all of that. We don't need to elevate anybody because they now are running, and a lot of them won their precinct delegate positions as a Republican. And they, in the future, will be going to the county conventions, electing the people to represent us at those county levels, and then representing and getting people to run and represent us at the state level. Again, there's not going to need to be any overthrow this, overthrow that, establishment, grassroots. It will be a representation of the people because we are a part of the process. Happened all over Michigan, and it hasn't happened for decades. Secure My Vote. 514,000 signatures a week ago today turned in. You did that. Over 200,000 of these signatures were gathered because we see the checkbox at the top now. Were done by you. They were filled out by you and signed by you, whether it came in the mail or whether you'd circulated or you participated in many of these signing events. And this will do many things for election integrity. It will force photo ID. It'll stop the absentee applications for going in the mail. It will stop the Zuckerberg money. It'll make it a felony if indeed you ballot harvest in the state of Michigan. It will do many things that will correct many of the problems we know exist in our state. That's because of you. It's the second time in 2 years that we, the people, have gotten over 500,000 signatures to enact law because of a governor who vetoed them. You did that. Everything I'm talking about is because many of us have stood up. And you might have done it because you listened to somebody or something, but it needs to be because you have yourself recognized the need to serve, not because somebody told you to. I talk about Secure My Vote because there are going to be a constitutional amendment on the ballot in November. It's going to be Promote the Vote. It's the second time. And before you say this is crazy, this will never pass, understand you, all of us, representative in Michigan, passed Promote the Vote the first time only in 2018 at 67%, for God's sakes. What did it do? 9 days. What did it do? It caused no question absentee voting. Anybody can question it. You didn't have to have a reason. No reason absentee voting. It did all kinds of things that are now, again, in our Constitution, gave our Secretary of State a bunch more power, and we stood by, it didn't pay attention, and half of us, I guess, probably believed it was good, and we voted for it. We now know these aren't good, but this one is absolutely horrendous. If you've ever cared 1 minute about election integrity, you have to do everything you can to defeat this, and that means we got to prevail in the House, the Senate, the governorship, but we also have to have a no vote. And the good news is it's going to be no, and I think there's going to be at least 3 of them on there. It's going to be no. We're going to be no, and we're going to run that ballot initiative and talk about those proposals, amendments, because this is going to prohibit photo ID. It's going to force a ballot box for every 15,000 voters. It's going to cancel any ability to do all audits except for election officials. That would mean Detroit's going to do audits of only Detroit. It's going to allow all of our military people to vote on election day, mail them on election day, and allow up to 6 days for them to come in after election day. Plenty of time to ballot harvest. It'll legalize not only ballot harvesting, but it will legalize Zuckerbucks. It has to be defeated, and what we know is that photo ID is an 80% positive. Everyone believes that 80% of the people, no matter what demographic, believe that photo ID is a good thing. They don't mind showing it at a liquor store. They don't mind showing it at the restaurant. They don't mind showing it at the library or when they travel on an airplane, or certainly for you to prove who you are to get your, none other than to get, by the way, into any government building. All of them require your photo ID, but they don't want you to show it for voting. We have to defeat that, and we will. That leads me to the governor's race. I know a lot of you that are watching had your governor of choice. Understand that only 5 weeks ago, that between 50 and 84% of the people polled, and a pretty large poll actually, did not know the candidates even by name. I'm not talking about what they stood for and separating them by character, what they did, who stood up first, who fought here, yeah, who could beat Whitmer, all of these reasons you gave and why you chose who you chose. But understand they didn't know any of them at all. And I want to add to that because with only 5 days to go, there were 38% of our electorate that were undecided as to who to vote for. They still didn't know many of them. So we had sought out, we did those interviews. I want to share with you that of the 5 interviews, there were a total of just shy of 145,000 interviews that were watched or listened to in the last 2.5 weeks before Election Day on Tuesday. 145,000 interviews were watched or listened to. Many of you listened to multiple ones, and the reason for that was simple. If your candidate didn't prevail, you need to know what all the candidates were about so that you could go back potentially and watch the candidate who prevailed to know what it is they stood for, what we got them on record to do, what they're going to do about education and masking and forced vaccinations and all the things that we really are fighting against. But the main thing I wanted to talk to you about is the contrast. The contrast, regardless of who it was that was going to prevail. And many people after the Trump endorsement moved to Tudor Dixon. Election day, I think it was probably 60%. Reason I say that is understand there were already are in the neighborhood of 600,000, 700,000 absentee ballots that had already been sent back in again. This was only the final 30, 40% that showed up on election day that had the ability to move what they did. And most of you, of course, didn't change who was you're going to vote for, nor should you have. But the fact is, it's what the people chose. And when people say, well, but 60% of the people didn't vote for her. Well, you're right. I told you the person you were going to have, obviously, 60% of you weren't going to vote for the winner. Same story. But understand, for some of you, 80% of the people who voted didn't vote for your candidate. And for some of you, 85% of the Republicans didn't vote for them. Now we've got to go get people in the middle, people who aren't Republicans or Democrats, or we've got to get Democrats and independents and people who haven't participated in the process to come over and vote with us. How do you think we're going to go from 15 to 50 in 90 days without any money? Bottom line is, it isn't going to happen. It wasn't going to happen. The fact that the numbers ended up the way they were, regardless of the candidate, I want to give you just a couple of sports analogies. Coach football, coach baseball many more years than I did football, but I like football. But what you find, of course, is that you have your players, and I love sports, so I love my professional teams. I've been a Lions fan all my life. I know, sad, isn't it? And I've been a Tiger fan. Fortunately, I've been able to see some victories there. And I'm a Michigan football fan. I know some of you don't like me anymore either after I say that, but Maize and Blue is my team. But I root for Michigan State if they're not playing Michigan. I bet you guys state people don't do that about Michigan. All right, enough of that. I'm throwing that out there because it is important for us to know that whether your coach is there and you love your coach or you love your quarterback, he is there. If your quarterback leaves, whether he goes to the NFL, whether he changes teams, whether he gets injured, the next man up, the person who fills the back, you go, oh, I don't like him. He can't throw the ball down the field. He's not who I thought he was. He is nowhere near the charisma, nowhere near he's not a leader. He's never going to win. Look, if you're heading into that next big game, you better find a way to win. Well, guess what? Going to move to professional teams now because we are headed to the Super Bowl. I'm sharing that with you because we've gotten to the Super Bowl. We have our slate of candidates, and we have recruited and drafted 2 incredible players in Matt DePerno and Christina Caramo. Do you know that they cannot win election? I don't believe they will either one of them win if we don't win the governorship. Almost assuredly. We need to have a team and a slate. And we have 2 extremely strong people that are going to represent us in that big game. And they are guaranteed us that they are going to protect elections. They're going to protect Michigan law. They're going to govern based on law, not based on political science or on other things that we've seen happen with the people that are sitting there now. And we have a candidate for governor, another woman, who's going to battle another woman, another mother who's going to be able to go toe to toe with this woman. Whether it is your choice of quarterback or your choice of team, the fact is, you are in the Super Bowl, you're in the stands. But right now, for this next 90 days, we need you on the field. We have to be on the same team, and we have to be rooting for who it is that's representing us. This is a strong, strong slate of people, and we are going to unify the party. We're going to unify the grassroots, and we're going to unify the conservatives, the parents, and the people who have been oppressed over the last 4 years. The lawlessness that we have experienced, the breaking of the law with the 1945 law, the executive orders, the masking, the vaccinations, the arresting of business owners, all of it has to end. The nation is watching. They're watching Michigan. You know why? Because I believe as Michigan goes in 2024, so goes the presidency. It's a fact. Now, we are up against a huge, huge obstacle. Again, it'd be almost like David and Goliath. It's against some of those games you've seen. Oh, they're the favorite team. I don't care. We're going to create a game plan that is going to create victory. That game plan only works if you're part of it, if you're part of the team. Next man up. I need you to be part of the team. I share this with you because, as the Detroit News stated today, Dixon now faces the challenge of uniting a fractured Republican Party. Yes, and in a few days, we have to find a way to get past it, because what is the alternative? The alternative is Whitmer, Nessel, and Benson for 4 more years. Potentially Whitmer being your president in 2024. You don't think that's the case? It is. By the way, the Democrats don't care where her money's coming from. She has almost $15 million on hand, and I promise you another $15 million, $20 million will come from all kinds of outside progressive organizations, because if she wins here, it will be one stepping stone to the presidency. And you can say, well, let her be the president. No, she's likely to be the president. And how will that work out for you? If we defeat her in November, she's not going to be the president. Let's get rid of her once and for all. Let's defeat her once and for all. But we're not going to outdo them through numbers. We're not going to outdo them through TV commercials or through lies and manipulation of information. We're going to defeat them by providing people with the truth and the clarity, and provide the clear distinction and differences between what 4 more years of Whitmer could and likely will be versus freedom and liberty against tyranny and oppression, about parental choice in schools, in medical freedom. We are going to look much more like Florida than we look like Michigan right now. And guess what? We are 50th in recovery. We are at the bottom of creating new jobs. We're at almost the top in per capita of people leaving Michigan because they're fed up. And it is a beautiful state. It's not the state's fault, and it's not the people's fault. We are the majority. We simply need to act like it. We've done it at the local level now. At the primaries, we have won gigantic victories that they don't want to talk about. Now, we have 90 days to get ready, to get healed up right now. Get yourself in that cold water bath. Get yourself ready to go, because we're going to need you to start practicing and getting ready. And strategically, we're going to need you to start carrying out the plays, because they happen starting now with 90 days to go. The only way we're going to prevail is going to be if we can have concise message that you can share with your neighbor, in your neighborhood, in your gas stations, the water cooler, at the practice field this fall. If we can come together and talk about reminding people what they went through, reminding people what happened to their children and their businesses and their individual lives, and how they couldn't get unemployment, and how she is now taking your children's and grandchildren's printed money COVID money in a lot of ways that was passed through the state now for her to hand out like candy and take credit for, again, this huge expenditure in early childhood development. What a bunch of crap. All it is borrowed money. It isn't because it's some surplus that we've had because of we run a state well. Sustainability of that is zero. We have to remind people the alternatives. Where were you when your loved ones were in the nursing home and they were telling you all the lies about COVID and keeping from you all the data and not providing any transparency of any kind to you and weaponizing the health departments, the state police, Lara, again, that's the licensing bureaus, to all the business owners, to the liquor licenses, to the food licenses, to be able to control our people and to hold us down. That is the alternative. And if there are a handful of you out there that say, I simply don't care because I'm following my guy who lost, then you are lost. Because I don't believe I know these candidates personally. And not a one of them will wish you to wait to have them tell you what to do. They have informed you and educated and combined you and gotten you unified together to make decisions and be the solution for your own family, for your own church, for your own business, for your own community. That's empowering you. Every one of them was meant to empower you, not to be your fearless leader and tell you what to do. They haven't gone anywhere. They're going to continue to build up. They're not a nominee, but they're not going away. I can promise you. But don't wait for them to answer. They've already told you what to do. Defeat Whitmer. We have to double down on what we've done. All the work that you did for a candidate, we now are doing like we did in Unlock Michigan against Whitmer. The message is clear. The distinction is clear. And it is easy because under this message, this Choose Freedom message is the message that we're going to use to resonate. It's not a Stand Up Michigan. It's not a conservative coalition. It's not an Ottawa County Patriots. It's not a Jackson County Patriots. It's not whatever it is. And you can go through all the list of grassroots groups. Forget them all. They're just a title. They're a name. It's the people that are within them. And we all choose freedom. We choose freedom of speech, freedom of liberty. We choose freedom to pursue life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We choose freedom from oppression and from tyranny. Choose freedom can be spoken and shared and talked about in churches because this message has nothing to do with a political affiliation or any group. It is simply a message. It isn't owned by anybody. It's not an organization. It's simply a message. Your churches need to choose freedom because our country was built on Christian principles. Our Constitution that we are defending right now and the people that we're electing to defend this stand for choosing freedom. And our ability to choose our elected representatives, our ability to choose who it is we follow, and the foundation in which our country and our was built, again, is biblical principles. The church has to wake up. We've got an abortion amendment coming. We will be one of the most pro-abortion states in the country. We will be the most tyrannical states in the country. And we will be a country who can never win another election if we don't do these three things. So if you want to sit down and feel bad about your candidate, then I don't know what to tell you. I guess we got to find new people. Because right now, I'm not babying anybody anymore. It is time for us to rise up and to achieve something bigger for yourselves and for your business. Let's choose freedom. Let's choose freedom for each other. Let's make Michigan something special like it was. Let's make it the engine that it used to be. Let's return Michigan to provide the great opportunities that we always have, and we'll become a place that everybody will want to live. Understand that we have a great group of candidates that are representing us, and understand that they are a stark difference to what it is that we have experienced in the past. And so many of the conspiracy theories, social media is a disaster, people. People have, it doesn't matter what the rumor is. Typically, I can dispel it in about 5 minutes. You go to the source. Just get away from it a little while. Look at what has happened to you and what the alternatives are, and let's get on board. Uh, you know, it's the same thing. What if we hadn't won the AG position? Would we have not wanted to get rid of Nessel? Honestly, it's the same thing with Secretary of State. If it turned out it wouldn't have been Christina, would we have not wanted it? You might have said, well, what difference does it make? I can promise you there's still a stark difference. And Tudor Dixon will be a good candidate, and I will have her on. We'll do interviews with her. We will get her on record on many of the questions that you have. She already has been. When she was a journalist, she was one of the first ones bringing in people like Tammy Clark and Kristen Megan, bringing in people like that to get the real information against masks, against forced vaccinations, she is for medical freedom. She's for parental choice and education. She's for pro-life. She's for pro-Second Amendment. I mean, literally, it's 90% of the things that you want. She may not be everything you want because you knew somebody personally, but I'm sorry, they didn't win, and it wasn't close. It's time that we have to move on, and I understand it takes a few days. But guess what? We don't have a few days, because while we're doing that, the governor is organizing and the media is complicit in destroying our narrative. And as they mentioned in the Detroit News, the fractured party. The fractured party. It's only fracture if we allow it to be fractured. Let's not let us be fractured. We've got enough to do with notifying the other people. We are going to have two other things I want to mention. One is, if you're those of you that were on locals, it is October the 8th, Saturday, October the 8th. We will be having a Choose Freedom statewide rally. This is not a Stand Up Michigan event. This is an event by all grassroots organizations and by the state party. This is going to be and when I say state party, people representing all of us, conservative voters, in November. We're going to bring in national speakers. It is going to be a huge event that everybody is going to want to participate in. And we are looking to have thousands and thousands of people there. And like I say, we're bringing in national speakers. But this is the message: choose freedom. Not again about a logo of some group. It is about your individual rights and liberties. Secondly, it's October 8th, Saturday. Mark it down in your calendar. We will have a location identified and released to you probably in the next week. And then we'll begin to bring in the candidate list. And believe me, these are going to be some incredible candidates from around the country that you're going to want to hear from. Lastly, I want to talk to you a little bit about those of you that watched the interview, went to standupmichigan.com. You clicked on those interviews and you saw that page where you went to. We're going to begin doing interviews with many of these candidates and groups that have won to help inform you, educate you, and provide a question and answer opportunity for these candidates. We're going to bring in people like John Gibbs, bring in people like Joe Moss to talk about how he did this and what they did at a countywide level at county commissions. We're going to bring in people like Matthew Seafried very soon. He was and is Michigan's election integrity inspector from the RNC, who has been here for a year now. And we have recruited, trained thousands of people that help work polls. We had a totally different representation at the polls this election than we ever have for decades. I'll be getting you more data on that as the days roll along, but I want you to know we had thousands of people sign up to serve, and we put them on notice that we're watching. We're watching every ballot. We're watching every over your shoulder. We're watching drop boxes, and we have targeted specifically those demographics and those jurisdictions where we had problems before, and we had a whole lot less problems, and they know we're there. We know we're not going away, and we need more of you when it comes election day in November. It's just another part of it. We're creating task forces that are going to become and be active at all elections, getting to know your clerk and your community and making sure that they're following the law and that they understand what it is we need to do. And so I want you to know that very soon we will begin this programming. We will probably do most of them live. Some of them will be recorded. We will let you know when they are. So join our email list if you're not on it. It is just go to standupmichigan.com, click sign in, put in your email, build a profile. No cost associated with it. You'll be on our email list and you'll be identified by county so that you can be engaged in your county community. We need Stand Up Michigan chapters still in about 40 to 50 other counties around Michigan. And we already have the people around. We have to organize you together so that we can, again, so that you can be the solution in your own community. So go there and sign up, because there'll be lots and lots of great information. And if there is someone that you would love to have us interview, and certain questions as we get closer that you'd like to ask, we will provide you an opportunity, especially on locals, to give you some polls and say, hey, these are some questions we've heard. What would you like us to most talk about, or what guests would you like us to have on? And we will bring those guests in, and we'll give you the opportunity to, again, ask questions and get them on record so that we can hold them accountable after they're elected. I want you all to have an incredible evening. I want you to know that we are winning. I want you to know that we're only winning because you are and have been a part of the solution. And we are just getting started. God bless, and have